and the concept of sustainable versus regenerative agriculture is what we're going to present a little bit on tonight. But I didn't want to present in a vacuum, but within the context of what we're experiencing now here in the city of Cleveland, also throughout this country of ours and the world. Food insecurity is a big issue, as you know, and people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And so not being able to access good, healthy food, and if they do access, being able to prepare properly, being able to, develop and to foster, this cycle and system in a regenerative way and a sustainable way is really what it should always be about for people. So for us, I'm gonna give you a little backdrop on our story at our farm, and then we'll go a little bit into some statistical information and just really what's going on in Cleveland, our farm, and with this whole social justice movement concerning the food, within the context of America's food system. So was that good, Danny, to open it up for a few questions? Initially to kind of set a stage and a platform, so it's not to speak in a vacuum. So it engage me, you all. What do you feel you would like to obtain this evening? What is it that we can give aside from the presentation? I'm going to layer on some spirit there, but at the end of the day, what do we need? What is it that I can pull to help? Because I think more importantly than anything, people need to be inspired. Everyone, responds well to inspirational things. I mean, what would it be like if everyone was inspired? I mean, we talk and we engage and we do many things throughout our day, throughout our life to inspire us for various things, so our life doesn't become boring. We're not in a doldrum. We are finding ourselves ascending into the heights of consciousness that we desire, inspiration, and so what drives, our, project at Rid-all is a certain level of passion. And I know I've been personally responsible for having a lot of that. If you ever came by the farm during certain, days of the week, we're really engaged, and so this is sort of a piece. And I would just like to hopefully pass a little bit of that spirit on for you tonight. So if any outstanding thoughts or questions moving forward, so we can set a context, I'll just move on. Any thoughts? What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, if anyone has any questions they'd like to contribute. Amy, you have something?
I just, it's not really a question, it's really just a comment that really everything that you just set up that you were going to talk about is what I'm interested in. So
okay.
I don't have an initial question, but I'm really interested in just food justice and kind of maybe any thoughts that you have about sort of where we've gone wrong in our country in terms of this food supply chains and just in general the weakening of that of our social sort of fabric and our communities and the neighborhoods, and how the food injustice really contributes to that. And so I'm interested in just the history of your farm and how, community work is hard work. And, I'm interested in sort of your approach to engaging a variety of people in the farm, but also in sort of the bigger picture of policy and just in general, some thoughts on maybe, the best ways to correct some of the problems that we are sort of living with now.
Very good, very good. Thank you, very good input.
I have one question.
Yes, how are you?
Rid-all, to me, is one of those weed killers. So I thought that sort of was sort of oppositional to this whole plan for the green palette. So are you going to go into the choice of?
Yes, in fact, I would, I would open up with that whole concept. See, Rid-all is an acronym. that stands for redemption, integrity, and determination for all mankind.
Okay,
and
good.
that had morphed and evolved over a number of years. Well, basically kind of instantly. Once my partner, Damien, our initial co-founder, who had a environmentally friendly exterminating company, called his exterminating company Rid-all. And he loved that. And Damien, if you knew Damien, you just knew how he was Mr. Rid-all. And so at the end of the day, when the project came along, it was like the 501c3, everything. Damien just made sure it was all in Rid-all name so that he locked us in. And so it was kind of like, Rid-all became the, the name of the project. Very, very, very well respected business model in the city of Cleveland. And to Damien's tribute, that's how it started. And so, yeah, so the price was paid. The redemption went forth. The integrity is impeccable, and the determination is visible every time you come to the farm. So that'll be my segue. And I'm going to share my screen here, and just so you guys can kind of pick up on that. Are you seeing it?
Not yet.
No, yeah.
Not yet. Now, nothing? Okay, let me do it this way.
Not yet, no.
Okay, hold on one moment.
Take your time. I'm always
okay.
The sharing thing is probably for me too.
Okay.
There we go.
Oh,
there, something there?
Yep.
Okay. Better now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terrific. Okay, let me see if I can go back. All right. Rid-all Green Partnership. This is where our urban farm project resides at 8129 Otter Road in Cleveland, Ohio, where we have a robust campus that initially began as an 1.25 acre piece of property off of Otter Road, which is off of 82nd and Kinsman. And from there, that 1.25 acres, it basically evolved and morphed into the campus that we have, there today. And we'll share a little bit with you a few pictures kind of layered in here. However, land, food, and social justice, sustainable versus regenerative agriculture. So for us, this has been a subject that we continue to be involved in, being in the central neighborhood there, which is on 83rd and between 83rd and 82nd off of Kinsman, which is the central neighborhood. One particular distinction about that area is that there is a 29-year disparity of life expectancy between the people who live there and those that live in the surrounding area less than 8 miles away. So everyone within 8 miles has at least 29-year more life than the people in the central neighborhood, or I should say the central neighborhood. The residents of that neighborhood, on majority, live on an average of 29 years less than the average Clevelander. So that's just however that resonates best in your mind. That's just what's going on. What does sustainable agriculture mean to you? So for us, we knew that a project like this foundationally was something that was designed and implemented to be an assistance to the community there. And when I say assistance, it is to kind of be a demonstration of what's possible, how we can turn some of those statistical numbers around. We understood that being a food desert, the distinction of being a food desert was huge, and especially that area was a major food desert. And so these disparities of health grew out of lack of access, lack of knowledge, and a lack of access. And so to show and demonstrate how to place access to good, healthy food right in the community was what we were basically bringing. That was our piece. We were actually growing relationships, growing an understanding between ourselves and the necessity to grow our food or touch the soil, however you want to put it, because scientific research had also found and discovered over 10 years ago how touching the soil, something that urban dwellers had don't do as much of as they used to, found out that touching the soil, that the beneficial bacteria within the soil help stimulate one's pituitary gland to release endorphins and oxytocin into the body, which is like a natural feel good or like a Prozac created within your own body for yourself. And so we knew and recognized that we just needed the right environment. People are products of their environment. And so a synthetic environment was creating people who now had evolved to the point where, or how would you say, devolved to the point where now they had 29 years less of living quality of life than the average Clevelander. And so that was very unsustainable. And so we knew that in order to have a sustainable project, we had to reach deep within and find out a key that would help to ignite something within the soul of the people. Because one thing for sure is in the African-American community, everybody has a history of knowing about agriculture. Even just the whole slave concept was, rooted in the fields. And so, it's not hard to make that connection. However, there's a serious stigma associated with that, which is just very, very negative. And so people carry these things. And so we tried to help eradicate or alleviate some of those things by showing the benefits of it and some of the cross benefits. Okay, just like you're trying to grow cotton off of Kinsman, all these kinds of things. Like, what are you all doing? All these questions begin to, come up as we begin the project. And so it didn't take long before the people really understood and kind of got it. But it was very, very negative initially, very negative. So what is sustainable? What does it mean to you? If your answer is like most people, you probably will begin talking about sustainable in relationship to the environment, or protecting the natural ecosystem, or conservation of renewable resources, et cetera. But when we talk about sustainable, one is able to be maintained at a certain rate or level, conserving an ecological balance by avoiding depletion of natural resources. See, because sustainability is the ability to exist constantly. In the 21st century, it refers generally to the, how would you say, I'm sorry, okay. Based on the Earth's biosphere and human civilization, to coexist. So there is an effort, to find that balance. We're always seeking homeostasis, at different levels. And so we need to find that with each other as well. And so sustainability was always kind of like, well, how do we dwell? How can we peacefully coexist? And that's sustainable. But then the whole concept of peaceful coexistence became a thing because it wasn't equality within that. It was skewed, very much so. Understanding, what was needed, was more than just a doctor, but we needed to reach into the soil, to help change our condition. It's kind of like, one group of people may be looking for someone to come and help them or come save them, but we took on the concept that come and let us be the help that we're looking for. Let's save ourselves, and if you want to help us change the world or help us save, those or this community, let us put our hearts and minds together and put some effort behind that. And let's put our hands in the soil, because believe it or not, you can pay the farmer now, or you can pay the doctor later. But we do know that health, that wellness comes from the soil. And that was the whole concept of, a lot of our movement. Okay, what I'm going to, hold on one second. I'm going to have to break this down a little bit because the screen is where you guys are showing is blocking the text where I can't see what I have here. Okay, so it's good. Are you all still able to see everything? It's okay, right? It just reduced a little bit, right? Okay, so if our food and farming systems are to be sustainable over time, we must maintain the health and productivity of land and must conserve water, energy, and the other natural resources upon which agricultural productivity ultimately depends. So the next thing most likely to come to mind is economic sustainability. If it's not profitable, it's not sustainable. Like we say often in the community, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. It has to be a connection there. It has to be something, profitable. So in a capitalistic economy, the markets determine who gets to use land and other resources and how they will be used. So, you know, we already understand about land use allocation, et cetera. I mean, you name it, redlining, all those things. But sustainable farms need not maximize profits, and farms need not generate a profit every year, but a farming system that is not economically viable is not sustainable, no matter how ecologically sound it might be. So no matter what we have in terms of whatever we do on that project or do it, you know, or grow on that farm, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense to keep doing it. And so we have to find a way to make it make sense. So part of what we did is we launched an educational campaign. So most of what we marketed was education and also the demonstration sites. So we set up sites around the city. We use our site as a model. We bring people there to help inspire, you know, again, inspire them to do something like this in their own community. And when they come to our farm, they're able to kind of see how it makes sense and how it can be a sustainable or a regenerative endeavor. Because our whole segue into this, you know, green movement was about regenerative lifestyle, regenerative agriculture, regenerative wellness, you know, everything regenerative. That kind of became like a thing. You know, we just find ourselves having to stop saying, okay, regenerative. It is about regenerative. Because when we break down the definition, when we understand what needs to happen, that was exactly what needed to happen. To not just sustain, because sustain, when people hear the word, it really infers that let's maintain this where it's at, right? So let's sustain, let's maintain this where it is, as opposed to, you know, our concept is that, well, these systems are broken. It would be a shame to sustain something broken. You know, let us regenerate, resuscitate, revive, right? Bring back to life, and then let's sustain that. So we had to do some tweaking, you know, to these systems and begin so we could understand. And so you'll see a little bit here. You see Leon Bibb, he's regular. He comes down to the farm. These are some of our guys down here. Also a new site that we have up in Maple Heights that just came about. Their greenhouses up there now, right off of Warrensville in Maple Heights, real nice. Also showing a little apiary situation here. Now we have maybe 12 bee boxes, and we're producing, you know, gallons of honey yearly, you know, from the community, you know, from right there off of Kinsman. You know, we have an orchard. In fact, right here, all along these trees here, although you see this is the springtime, all these trees here are actually fruit trees. All on our site, all along the front of our site are fruit trees. So this is actually a fruit orchard, over 30 fruit trees and 25 berry bushes, where, you know, the variety of berries, from raspberries to strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, you know, you name it, they're there. The apricot trees, peach trees, cherry trees, apple, even have hazelnut and black walnut trees. So it's a wide variety of things that are able to be done in these settings. Now, one major piece or component is the soil. We spent actually a whole year reconstituting, reviving and remediating our soil before we put one plant in the ground. We composted, you know, and created hundreds of cubic yards of compost soil that year. So everything that we put in the ground was put in the ground in our soil, not in any pre-existing soil. Because when we did the studies, we saw there was high levels of lead, arsenic, you know, varieties of you know, mercury, you name it. It was in our soils, in our urban environment. And so it's in gross need of remediation. And so it's basically like a toxic brownfield. And so we had to do brownfield reclamation. And so our whole thing was we went in and excavated the land, took out about 3 or 4 feet of all that soil. Everything you're seeing here was excavated out. And we brought in a little topsoil from Ashtabula County, but we actually put in 4 to 5 feet of wood chip. And so all that wood chip you see there, it's not just a surface treatment. It's actually the surface itself. I mean, you know, the farm is literally built on on 4 to 5 feet of wood chip. Okay, because what that is that's carbon, and what it's doing is it's actually sequestering. It's allowing the composition of our farm soil composition to totally be resuscitated, to be renewed, for the toxins to now be held back underground under a vapor barrier. Because again, as we lay down, a barrier, then we built on top of that, and then we built the greenhouses on top of that, so that when you see inside of our greenhouses, there's nothing coming in contact with pre-existing soil. All in the orchard, nothing is coming in contact with pre-existing soil. It's all the soil we made and created that is nutrient rich, none of the toxic urban soils. And so this is the foundational level, or the foundational layer. And when you talk about the consciousness of the community, they have to see it from the soil up. From the soil up. You realize the soil holds the key to so many of the things that we're missing. Still to this day, there's been more scientific research on the planets and the stars and what's in the sky than what's been done on the soil. That's a true statement. It's a true story. So there are a lot of keys, in the soil. Moving on. Okay, as we talked about, as we continue this, understanding where we are in our urban environment. That what basically defines where we are is a degenerative situation. Degenerative. I would even go as far as to say that the agricultural practices that many of us have been practicing, not personally, but our commercial practices are degenerative. They have destroyed our topsoil. And this goes back to over 100 years. I mean, in 1936, there was a convening in our U.S. Senate. A group of doctors came in and gave a huge warning, and said that if something wasn't done, that most of the American population would fall ill to some type of disease that we don't even really know about here in 1936, because we no longer possess good, healthy topsoil. The topsoil had eroded because of bad farming practices, but that the farmers could put the minerals back into the soil if they were allowed to. It would need a Sabbath, a rest, a peaceful time where they could regenerate themselves. But again, industry drives hard. They didn't want to take that break. They didn't want to take the time to resuscitate the soil, and thus use a lot of chemical nutrients to trick the soil into growing certain beautiful looking plants like Miracle-Gro. Miracle-Gro can grow a beautiful looking plant, but it can be empty of nutrition because it doesn't possess the content of nutrient in the soil to make it a potent piece of produce. And so we find that to be the case all around America and many places around this world. Okay, beautiful looking food, but it's empty. This is why we're getting sick, and we're blindsided by illness and disease, because we feel as if we're eating our fair share of vegetables and fruits. And we are in many cases, but we're eating empty vegetables and fruits. And this is the difference. It's degenerative. You see, so of or characterized by disease or symptom, by progressive, often irreversible deterioration, loss of function, et cetera, et cetera. You all get the picture. I don't have to belabor that. This is sort of how we see the beginning of a regenerative movement, on top of the former, to plant new and to build new. So this is urban agriculture. This is the Soil Brothers. This is basically one of our businesses that grew out of our soil initiative. So now we have a product line of soil products called the Soil Brothers. Okay, so the regenerative agriculture for us tending to or characterized by regeneration or regenerative process of a living organism to regrow, to replace lost or injured tissue, etc. Of or pertaining to an organ or tissue to regrow once destroyed, etc. Bring into renewed existence, to generate again. See, this is what our cities need, a renewed existence, to generate again, to be a source of life again. to be something, robust, and inspirational again, right? And so again, bringing new and more vigorous life to, as in an area or an institution, especially in economic terms, to revive. In other words, regenerating the inner cities, to my point, right? Synonymous with reviving, revitalize, renew, restore, breathe new life into. See, this is what's needed. This is urban agriculture. This is what has to happen. You can't go in there with like, let me put some plants in the ground. No, because the ground is toxic and the people will actually end up toxifying themselves with toxic soil. It has to be a harsh pivot, right? With many of the traditional things that that our residents have been doing. And so this is why we're coming from this perspective, okay? So I kind of understand that. You guys kind of get it, you get it. So, so in regenerative agriculture, the term sustainability should be viewed as humanity's target goal of human ecosystem equilibrium, or that homeostasis we talked about earlier, while sustainable development refers to the holistic approach and temporal processes that lead us to the endpoint of sustainability. So despite the increased popularity of the use of the term sustainability, the possibility that human societies will achieve environmental sustainability has been and continues to be a big question. It's a question. Can we get there? I mean, now we're trying to draw down as opposed to find neutrality with the carbon issue. We're doing all these things, but our efforts still are sort of futile. But there is hope if more of us adopt a regenerative approach to this piece. Okay, this is why we're talking about regenerative like that. So I'm saying that despite the increased popularity use of the term sustainability, popularity that human societies will achieve environmental sustainability has been and continues to be questioned. Conventional wisdom has long held that the world cannot be fed without the use of chemicals and synthetic fertilizer. This is what has been advocated. This is why Monsanto was one of the biggest corporations in the corporate industrial complex, because we felt it was essential to our ability to sustain our life on this planet. We needed chemical fertilization. All right. Evidence now points to the new wisdom, a new wisdom, that the world cannot be properly fed unless the soil is properly fed. That's different. See, that's what the doctors came in 1936 to talk to our senators about. And you guys can look that up in U.S. Senate document number 264. You can just Google it, it'll pop up. U.S. Senate document 264 talks about, this type of situation. Okay, so regenerative agriculture enhances and sustains the health of the soil by restoring its carbon content, which in turn improves productivity, just the opposite of conventional agriculture. See, so regenerative agricultural practices include, and this is how you can recognize a project if nobody told you it was a regenerative project. Is it a no-till project? Do they use diverse cover crops? Is it in-farm fertility? No external nutrients, meaning that it's in-farm. Everything is sourced, internally sourced. No pesticides or synthetic fertilizers. No multiple crop rotations. Right? Together, these practices increase carbon-rich soil organic matter. The result, vital microbes proliferate. Roots go deeper, nutrient uptake improves, water retention increases, plants are more pest resistant, and soil fertility compounds. So farms are seeing this now. They're seeing soil carbon levels rise from a baseline of 1 to 2% up to 5 to 8% in over 10, right now. And so in over 10 more years, which can add up to 25 to 60 tons of carbon per acre. So it's estimated that at least 50% of the carbon in the Earth's soils has been released into the atmosphere over the past centuries. Bringing that carbon back home through regenerative agriculture is one of the greatest opportunities to address human and climate health, along with the financial well-being of farmers and citizens. That's a key point. So that's an excerpt from Paul Hawkins' book, Drawdown. He's a great guy. I don't know if you guys know that, but I would definitely recommend you get that book if you're not familiar with it. So almost everyone agrees, once they grasp the essential root of regenerative agriculture, they come to a great understanding that our food and farming systems must give back to the earth restoratively, as well as be ecologically sound and economically viable if they are to be sustainable over time. Okay, that's environmental justice. So that's how you use, sustainable and regenerative together, right? Not as if they're two worlds, but this is a marriage and understanding of how these things have to take place, not one alone in and of itself. So what about social justice? What about that question? Now we look at environmental justice. What about social justice? So again, for us, how do we then green the ghetto? That's our thing. When they come to the farm, another part of the campaign is greening the ghetto. People say, well, it's the greening the ghetto. Okay, so greening the ghetto. How are we restoring? So any system of food and farming that fails to meet the need of a society will not be sustained by that society, right? No matter how ecologically benign or profitable it may appear to be. It has to serve the people. So a society has physical and material needs. However, one of the most basic needs of any society is a sense of social equity or social justice. It's just bottom line. People need to be respected. This is bottom line. So any food and farming system that is not socially just does not meet the basic need, and thus is not sustainable, right? It's not sustainable. So a sustainable economy must meet the material needs of people by means that are perceived to be equitable and just by the society that supports it. This is why we see all the uprising in the streets, because people, they're tired, man. They're tired of what they've been experiencing, seeing, and witnessing over many, many years. And not just talking, everybody that mob that attacked the Capitol, they just as tired as the black guy that's homeless on the corner. They just as tired of the same, people, the same system. So we need to find a way to come together and make changes, as opposed to looking at each other like we the problem, right? That's not it. See, so human society is a subsystem of a larger natural ecosystem, and the economy in turn is a subsystem of society. The sustainability of a society perhaps depends even more upon strong relationships among its members than upon strong individual members. So that's why we say at Rid-all that we really grow relationships, not just produce. That's why I was saying that earlier. So what are the possibilities? It's so great. Imagine how sweet is the fruit of that planting. It's redemptive. Like we said before about, redemption, integrity, and determination. To redeem means to kind of pay a price for somebody. We say all the time that at Rid-all, we feel like we paid the price. We've been like the crash dummies for urban agriculture. We done lost all the money. We done got hurt. Everything, you name it, we done it for everybody. You don't have to make a mistake anymore. We've made all the mistakes for everybody. So that's why I'm saying that, now it's time to come together and resuscitate our communities, right? This is how we restore and regrow humanity. See, this is what I'm interested in, is growing humanity, not just some greens or some tomatoes. That's great too, but how do we regrow humanity, right? So, y'all supposed to know about me. I was going to come with something. So again, this was let's see. So this was a piece here, very, very key. Came out in London, England, right? Young lady named, well, she's going to get me too if I forget her name, but it's going to come back to me. But nevertheless, she ended up coming here to Cleveland and visiting us and doing an article on the farm, and it was great. But she put this out about a year ago. And so the Heat Island piece, this is an excellent example of inequality and a lack of social justice, right? Heat Islands, racist housing policies in the US linked to deadly heat wave exposure. So these deadly heat islands, right, which have fewer green spaces and tree canopies are linked to racist policies in urban neighborhoods study finds. So deadly urban heat waves disproportionately affect underserved neighborhoods because of the legacy of racist housing policies, which have denied African Americans home ownership and basic public services. A landmark new study has found. Extreme heat kills hundreds of people in the US every year. More than any other hazardous weather event is heat, including hurricanes, tornadoes, and flooding, according to the Centers of Disease Control. But heat waves have been occurring more frequently now since the mid-20th century and are expected to become more common, more severe, and longer lasting due to our current climate crisis, okay? It's not going away. It's going to be, you know, we talk about how this has been the hottest summer, last summer, over the last 100 years, it was the hottest summer, right? But a friend of mine told me, when you spend it this way, how about it was the coolest summer of the next 100 years, right? So that's the way to look at it, because it's not getting ready to change anytime soon, right? However, exposure to extreme heat is unequal. Temperatures in different neighborhoods within the same city can vary by 20 degrees Fahrenheit. It is mostly lower income households and communities of color who live in these urban heat islands, which have historically had fewer green spaces and tree canopy and more concrete and pavement, and thus are less equipped to cope with the mounting effects of global heating. So this new study reveals how current temperature disparities echo the legacy of past racially motivated town planning, you know, the whole red line piece. Urban neighborhoods denied municipal services and support for home ownership during the mid-20th century are now the hottest areas in 94% of the 108 cities analyzed by the researchers at Portland State University and the Science Museum of Virginia. So again, just trying to paint a picture for you, y'all can see. So bottom line is, what they're referring to is the fact that there's so much concrete in the urban neighborhoods, and that concrete holds heat. And usually in the summer, when we have a hot day out in Shaker, I live in Shaker. I was born and raised, I lived in Shaker most of my life. In the evening, it'll cool down, make it 60 degrees from a 90-degree day, because of the tree canopies and all the natural environment that we have in the suburban environment, right? In the urban environment, you don't have that. And so the buildings are holding the heat. The concrete parking lots holding the heat. The basketball court, everything is just holding heat. And it doesn't dissipate. It just remains. And so people, it said there'll be like a 20-degree disparity. So where the temperature may have gone down to 60 from a 90-degree day in Shaker, the temperature is still at 80, right, from that same 90+ degree day. It's just at 80 all night long, right? And so if you don't have a nice budget for your electric, you can't just run the air conditioner all night just because you're hot. You know, it's the economics involved, right? And so these are some of the disparities. You know, these are some of the things that people don't think about, because wealth is a land-based situation. Most of the land, when you look at many people in our country that are disenfranchised, you know, they were either immigrants from a place that they had land. Land is wealth, not a job. A job will get you some money. That's not wealth. People need land. And so as people, you know, are beginning to figure this out, they're beginning to see that, hey, I had a bad deal. They took my land and gave me a reservation or whatever it is. You know, I'm just saying, you know, we have to look at this differently now. A broken system, yes. Adam Smith, the father of contemporary economics, in his landmark book, Wealth of Nations, wrote, right? No society can surely be flourishing and happy, of which the far greater part of the members are poor and miserable. Now, that's just a fact. I don't care how happy, I'll be happy for you, but I need to be happy too. You know, I mean, it's just like that. It's just like that. So distrust and dissension arise among the rich as well as the poor, both groups being capable of dysfunctional relationships. So however Distrust and dissension are inevitable consequences of substantial and persistent economic disparity among members within the society. It's the same case in a family, in a club, you name it. If we're not all eating, you know, like the Godfather said, we all need to wet our beaks a little bit, right? So we all can't wet our beaks. It's a problem, right? So economic disparity inevitably creates a sense of social injustice. That's the bottom line. So we're talking about social justice. The bottom line is the economic disparity. I mean, but did you hear with the stimulus package and how the cry is that that's too much money for the people and all this kind of stuff? It's like, well, didn't we just give billionaires all these tax breaks, but the poor people can't get a little extra money? I'm just trying to figure that out. But this is the mentality. The economic disparity inevitably creates a sense of social injustice, and an unjust society is neither stable nor sustainable. You see, so this is what's happening. This is what we're seeing in our country, because it ain't just, and this is why it's happening. So you're going to have distrust and dissension ultimately lead to civil unrest. We saw it at the Capitol the other week, right? Civil unrest, which disrupts because people feel like they didn't get a fair deal. So if you don't get a fair deal, you feel a certain way, right? So the civil unrest, which disrupts the economy and ultimately leads to exploitation and destruction of the natural ecosystem, which is happening now. A market economy will not ensure social justice, however. A market economy provides for people only in relation to their willingness and ability to pay, not in relation to their basic needs. So there is a great distinction. And again, we have to marinate on some of these things because it's some heavy information. You know, it really is. So then what is a market economy? Market economy is a system where the laws of supply and those of demand direct the production of goods and services. That's what we are here in America. Supply includes natural resources, capital, and labor. Demand includes purchases by consumers, businesses, and the government. Businesses sell their wares at the highest price consumers are willing to pay. And that's a capitalistic, you know, economy. That's a good, everybody happy. The value of our work. The abilities of people to earn money and pay for food, clothing, and shelter do not necessarily, match their needs. All people have a basic right to sufficient food, clothing, and shelter to ensure survival and normal physical and mental growth and development. Our market economy will not ensure those rights. Inevitably, equity and justice must be ensured through conscious, purposeful actions by the members of society, good people like us, right? You know, by individual acts of compassion, you know, empathy, right? And by our public acts through government, different programs and grants and et cetera, to ensure the general welfare, right? Both are necessary and neither absolves our responsibility for the other. That just is what it is. It makes up a good structure. A society that does not accept this responsibility for social justice is not sustainable. Okay, we saw that. Is it a question of equity now? Because equity and justice do not require that everyone have access to the same quantity, quality, and variety of food, clothing, or shelter, or that food, clothing, and shelter be equally convenient or effortless for all. Equity and justice are matters of ensuring equal access to specific things to which all have equal rights, not equal access to all things. This is something that can be discussed, and this is something that I used to kind of prompt some dialogue for another thing, but it's something that you can also think about. A right to safe, nutritious food, for example, does not imply a right to prime rib and artichoke hearts, nor to packaged or pre-prepared foods. However, food and farming systems that do not accept responsibility of ensuring that all have adequate food, clothing, and shelter, they are not sustainable. They're not sustainable. Personal responsibility, we ask, what can I do? How can I do something? What is my responsibility? Each of us must accept our ethical and moral responsibility to help ensure the sustainability of human life on Earth. And not that first sustainability I talked about, that sort of pseudo piece, but the one that works tandemly with regenerative, agriculture, regenerative practices, regenerative lifestyles. This is very, very, very key. Sustainable is good within the context of regenerative. We can do this in part by supporting farmers who are committed to protecting the natural environment, helping to make ecologically sound food and fiber system economically viable. See, we don't even talk about fiber systems, but this is the whole concept of, your clothing. I'm real big on hemp. I mean, I'm for, just switching everything over to hemp. I mean, we love cotton, but cotton is not sustainable. I mean, 30% of the Earth's pesticide is used on cotton alone. Think about that. 30% of the Earth's toxicity of us just dumping chemicals on the Earth is to foster cotton industry. Right? Hemp is better. Linen is much better. I mean, cotton can still be around, but, we need to consider. We really need to think about that. Let that marinate for a minute. 30% of the Earth's pesticides on cotton. But we must also accept our responsibility to help build food and farming systems that are socially just. Social justice includes employment, equity for farmers, farm workers, and others employed in the system. But social justice also demands that all people have adequate food, clothing, and shelter. Sustainability is a question of environmental integrity and economic viability, but sustainability is also a question of social justice. This is it, Sustainability is about social justice. How do we do it, you all? How do we get there? Thank you so much for your time and attention. But we'd like to approach any type of questions or thoughts at this time. I'd like to welcome them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Marc, thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and join the conversation.
Get myself back to gallery view.
Thank you so much.
So that was so good. It was really, it's so much to think about. So much to think about there.
Well, I'm so glad we had the opportunity, to come together on this. But this is what we're busy doing. This is the passion, that we share. This is why we work very hard. This is our humanitarian give back. We're not just growing some vegetables, like we said. We're trying to grow an opportunity to help to save ourselves. Nobody want a handout. Sometimes you just want to be left alone so we can do what need to be done.
Yeah.
And if people are going to help, they can help in ways that are very, 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 very useful. But it has to be, the way that you're invited to help. Because we talk. Because I spent a lot of years in Africa, and I saw a lot of things, especially when it came to helping. We have a tendency to always know what's right for somebody. We love it. Well, y'all need. I know just what y'all need. And they come out. I saw it's this Italian company. They came to this place in Uganda, and they had built out this elaborate farm, and they never asked the people anything. They were really kind of like, oh, y'all, I know what y'all need. And they came and bought all this stuff, and as soon as they got finished, and as soon as they had grown all these beautiful fruits and vegetables, then came like 3,000 rhinoceroses. They just ate up everything. And they were like, what happened? What? They're like, well, they come through here every year about this time. They're like, why didn't you say? Like, you never asked. Y'all never asked. You just thought we needed something. We can't do nothing because the rhinoceros eat up everything. That's what I was trying to tell you. So it's similar things like that in the communities. You know, you got to engage with the people. You know, ask them what they need. You know, and try to find a way to help. You know, that's really, really sustainable and regenerative. You know, we don't need programs as much as we need institutions. See, institution is more, you know, is not temporary. It's more permanent. Program is temporary. You know, it's a Band-Aid. We help. Yeah, it helps. But institution, to fortify these institutions that we're trying to build is what we need, not new programs, you know.
So have you been able to use the farm, the Rid-all farm, as a place for these conversations to grow, so that there is, you know, conversation that reaches beyond even the farm, but into the health of the whole neighborhood and some of the policies that, you know, so people are, you know, more aware of how the policies are affecting the health of the neighborhood currently, and some things that.
Yeah, so we actually try to create forums and platforms for these types of discussions. This is why we have a lot of our council persons. The mayor's been there. You know, kind of you name it, they've been there as a platform to launch. In fact, we like to always say that this is our mound to pitch from. So you can kind of pitch any really good idea from the farm, because the farm it's a neutral ground. When you think about it, it's a universal language. Everybody understands food, no matter what language you speak, you know, no matter what community you're from, no matter what, you know, what your inclinations are, right? We all speak that food language.
I feel like you are very compelling and put forth a really great case. So maybe you don't run into this, but I wonder, like, you know, from young people that are like, well, I can just go to the store and I can just buy some, like, why do we have to do this whole farming thing? Like, I don't want to, right. That's a lot of work to get, you know, a tomato. I don't want to do that. And,
right.
You know, and also I wonder a little bit about just, and I try not to, I can be nostalgic about time, right? And sort of, you look back and you think there were good things that we trade efficiencies for, and we should really go back to some of those good things. But how do you sort of balance that with the fact that you're not going back? Like, we are going forward, we are always going forward. And how do we embrace those things that we need to moving forward that are good and healthy, and still, you know, sort of guard against nostalgia and just a desire to sort of replicate what we were doing. I don't know, maybe a little bit about some of that.
I'm totally with you on that. And this is why we're so passionate about trying to preserve what we have, because we can't go back to the good old days, because we've destroyed a lot of the foundational things that the good old days had in it. You know, we can't go back. We can only move forward. And this is the irony of the time we live in. And you know, because it's like we have to now go back in order to move forward as a people. Isn't that crazy? It's irony.
It feels like we're living in a craziness right now.
Exactly. We have to re-embrace grandma, re-embrace grandpa and all the elders. But he tell you, like, dummy, I told you need your vegetables. I told you can't trade off. You know, the doctor can't do everything for you. You know, you have to do some of it. You know, all these things. We have to go back in order to go forward now. And this is where we are. You know, and the sooner we recognize these things and begin to mitigate, you know, that gulf, that wide void that it's been created, the sooner and the better off we'll be. You know, I truly believe. Awesome. But it's great hope. Great hope.
Can you talk a little bit about how you have engaged some of the youth, and what kind of activities and outreach you've done?
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. So, I would, you know, several things. I would say one of our most notable adventures, and I would say it like that, is we would often during the season, maybe about 4 years ago, take kids from off the street and tell them that if you have any, play guns, toy guns, water guns, if it looked like a gun, I'll give you $20 for it. I'll give you a gift card for it. Or I'll give you a comic book for it, right? And so we created a thing where we designed a comic book series where it became more enticing to the youth than their toy guns. And so
Martinez, right? Was that Martinez?
Yeah, Martinez Garcia. Yep.
Yeah.
And so as part of the Rid-all team, he started off while he was in school working for Rid-all while he was going to school. And he said, he had talent. He said, man, make a comic book, And so our partner Damien, he drilled into him. I mean, all the details, and the rest is history. You'll see it when you pick the books up. But that's part of our campaign, our launch to the youth. And as well, see, because the story is kind of set in it's called Brink City, right? In Brink City, Green in the Ghetto. That's the series of the comic books, and there were it can be any city across America on the brink of destruction. That's what the whole Brink City was, And so any city across America kind of has these urban pockets where these kids kind of have the same kind of ideas, and each episode of the comic book kind of shows and takes them through how they kind of undo the evils of one thing or another. One had to do with undoing toxic soils and how you could remediate the soil in the community to make a better environment. One in conjunction with the sewer district, Northeastern Ohio Regional Sewer District did a partnership with us where we took Wally Water and gave him a makeover. We took Wally Water from a little drop. He became a muscle man and all kinds, and so these were the types of things, and we made this thing attractive, to the children, and made it exciting for them, immortalized some of them in the comic books themselves. We had essay contests for the schools where we'd raise a subject, and the one that wrote the best essay would actually show up in the comic book as a cameo, and so they immortalized in the book. And so all these types of things, this is how we get the attention of the kids. They want to see themselves in these positions doing things that are effective, doing things that matter, because they actually do see themselves as being able to affect the righteous change in the world. They have that kind of hope. They really do. Love the babies. Yeah, so I would say from there that would be some key things addressing the children outreach.
Thank you.
Yes, you're very welcome. So much. Oh yeah. So what are some of the things that the Waterloo Arts is doing with this initiative? I mean, you said a little bit before it, Danny, and so really understanding the great works that are being done. I was just wondering, how does one engage with the Waterloo Arts program?
I will let you talk, but I just wanted to say that I think this project is like way little compared to your project. So really like a temporary art project that has, is somewhat about community engagement, but I'll let Danny, talk a little bit more about it, but yeah, it's so inspiring to hear, about the Rid-all farm and the work that you're doing there. And that's really why we wanted you to talk, because just like you were talking about at the beginning, so much of it is about inspiration and about, I was just saying to someone the other day, probably Danny, that Cleveland can feel like dealing with the city of Cleveland sometimes makes you feel like it's like death by 1,000 cuts. Like you just, it's
yeah, I get that.
Like you start to lose your impetus to, make change happen or to fight for things that are worthwhile fighting for, because each little thing doesn't seem big enough. And so you kind of give up because the effort is so big. And so I think when people come together, you know, like you were talking about in your presentation, that's so important, just that building of community and the strength from within to make those changes and to drive what is healthy for the people actually living in those communities. And when it is coming from outside, it is, you know, it's definitely sort of a coming in as, you know, and sometimes people have good intentions, but it's a lot of
kind of imposition we talked about.
Yeah, and then really sometimes not even knowing, honestly, I think not even knowing the assumptions that you're making about a neighborhood when you make change policies and implement programs. And so just, it has to be done with people and not to people.
Yeah, totally. That's so true. So
and I think that's one of the things that we're hoping to do with the Green Palette. And it was so interesting that you talked about just how important it is to touch the soil, right? And how beneficial that is. And so I think part of what we're thinking is if we can, you know, get people to come together and touch the soil, what kind of conversations begin to happen there? So really it's about centering around public green space and kind of an engagement with that, but then also what comes from that. What can we learn from each other and about what needs to happen? So it's really a starting point in a lot of ways.
Beautiful. I'm inspired. I'm inspired to help in any way I can. You know, if you guys need us to just maybe come through and do a little consult in any way, if we have anything, if we're able, you know, we can do that. You know, we would love to do something like that.
Well, as you drive around the Cleveland neighborhoods, there are so many vacant lots that warehouses have been, in East Cleveland, warehouses have been torn down. And if we could put some of your energy in, but it sounds pretty overwhelming with all the soil mitigation and everything. But I mean, you talk about the lack of green space in the inner city contributing to the heat accumulation. I know the Western Reserve Land Conservancy is trying to restore the tree canopy in Cleveland, but if we could all coordinate and get our act together with gardens and trees, you know, maybe we could create a whole different world in the inner city. That would benefit everyone.
That's very, very important. Yes.
But I guess we have to do it in little plots here, there, and everywhere, you know, and start this whole innovative approach.
Yeah, incremental. It didn't happen. It didn't happen at one time. It's not going to repair at one time. It just has to be incremental. You know, sustained attention. You know, we can no longer, you know, take that kind of slower approach like we did in the 70s. You know, you kind of remember that movement in the 70s where it's like, you know, we have to help our environment. You had the Indian crying on the commercial and all these things. And, you know, right there, you know, that's when we really should have jumped on it, right? Not 30 years later, like, oh yeah, right, that carbon thing, right? What about that? Right. So, you know, this has to make an improvement. We have to kind of run now. You know, there is hope, but we have to draw down and not just have neutrality. We have a lot to do in terms of reparation of our soils, you know, our urban and our rural environments, because placing some of this compost and even biochar and things that we make there can actually restore the soil and draw down carbon back from the atmosphere into the soil again. You know, and so it's huge. It's a very, very huge advantage that you all have in putting your hands to this type of work. It's very needed. Very needed.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think like you made also a good point about the economics of it and the sustainability and thinking about the economics of it in terms of how it is sustainable, but you know, that has to be very purposeful. And I think also just really thinking about the interconnectedness of all these things. And so the, you know, the wastefulness of energy and the kind of ridiculous way that we deal with energy right now, and how that's connected to our economic well-being as places, and how it's connected to the health of people. And those are all really connected policies. And sometimes I think it's hard to see how they're connected. And so, you know, people think that talking about, you know, I'm not going to bring up cars. I bring up cars in every conversation I have. So I'm not going to talk about that. But, you know, just in general, like even the water for, you know, for the farming and all of these things, like it is in a way just so crazy that we let water fall on our properties, and then we take it away in pipes, one pipe, and then we bring water in another pipe onto our property. It is all fabulously expensive and completely breaking down to the point where our sewer district is now paying millions of dollars for people to, like we are doing, putting like plants on their roof because they're desperate to keep that water out of the system that can't handle it. So it's just, you know, there's so much insanity that way that we are so sloppy with our use of our resources. And it affects, you know, just the well-being of people in ways that I think are not always obvious. You know, like it isn't just for the good of Mother Earth and somehow being an environmentalist. It's, you know, has to do with your everyday life and all of the happiness of the people around you and the health of the urban center. And that urban center has to do with the health of everybody else in this region. So much connectedness.
So true.
I know we've gone over our time, so I don't want to, you know, keep you too late and everybody else, but I also have talked a lot. So if anyone has any questions.
I'm very happy to take the time with you all. I'm glad that you're inspired. And so, you know, I think that if that's the case, you know, I've done my job.
Thank you.
I'm definitely going to come back and visit.
We'd like to come visit you. I'd love to come visit Marc too.
Yeah, me too.
Please do. Well, you know, you gotta wait until it gets at least 30 degrees warm. At least 30 degrees. Right. So maybe about at least a month or so, we start getting some buds on the trees and whatnot, and it's gonna look nice. It's gonna be very nice.
We could come make use of ourselves. We could actually come do a little work on the farm. We would do a little.
You can. Yep. That'd be great.
Thank you so much, Marc. It was
Thank you, Marc.
Thank you so much. It was
wonderful. Yep. You have a blessed weekend, and thank you all for inviting me. And y'all okay with me?
Yes.
Right.
We'll be in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Everybody.
Good night, everybody.
We'll see you soon.